Okay, so it's June 6, 2020. Talking to Norm Rosenkrantz. He's 91. So we're going to talk a little bit about after his mother died. So let's start with, yeah, so what happened with your mom? You're 14 now, right?
No, I'm still 13. She died February 3rd of 43, and I would be I'm 13. I would be 14 on March 13th.
Yeah, so what exactly happened with your mom?
Well, I it was during the war, and 1943, and Jerry and I and Alan was born December 12th, 1942. So he was almost 2 months old when she died. And this was during the night of, or during the morning of February 3rd. And Jerry and I were sleeping, and all of a sudden, my mother comes running into the room, and she said, I'm dying. And we didn't know what to make of it. And she kept running around and said, call for a doctor, call for an ambulance. And that's what we did. We didn't know what dying actually means. It was a very difficult time for young children. And she kept holding her heart. And we had our relatives who lived across the street, my aunt and whole family. And my father got hold of them, and they came down, and we didn't have a telephone in the house. So I went with one of my aunt's son-in-laws to the candy store, because that's where the telephones were. And he called up emergency to get hold of a doctor, an ambulance, someone who could help us out. And I remember that we went back to the house, and my mother was in the bedroom. And then we all waited for an ambulance to come take her to the hospital. And what happened is that we kept waiting, and ambulances, unfortunately, this was during the war, and it was hard to get hold of an ambulance. So we just kept waiting, and I know an ambulance finally came, and they took her away. And my feelings were so mixed. I was at wit's end, and just didn't know what to do. I know that I hugged and stayed close with Jerry, and we cried. We cried, but really crying. We didn't know the real, at least I didn't know the real impact of her passing away, dying. I really didn't know.
So what did Louis go to the hospital with her?
You know, Mike, I don't know. I'm sure he did, but someone had to take care of me and Jerry and Alan. Alan was in a crib. I mean, he was an infant. So the only thing I do remember is that my mother died, but they didn't tell my Aunt Rose, who lived downtown, which I told you before. And they just told her that Miriam wasn't feeling well, and they told her to come up to the apartment. We lived on that time in the West Bronx on Walton Avenue. And I remember her coming up to our apartment. And when she came in the door, she looked around and she said, "Where's Miriam?" She looked around and she started screaming, because what Jewish people do when someone dies is they cover the mirrors. And she saw that the mirrors were covered and Miriam wasn't there.
So Rose was Miriam's sister, is that right?
No, Rose and my aunt who lived across the street, Lena, were sisters, and they were sisters to my mother's mother. So Miriam was their niece, in effect. Miriam was their niece, and that's why we moved there, because we wanted to be closer to family.
So do you remember Louis at all during this time?
No, I really don't remember him at that point, because everything was just so mixed up, so chaotic. I know all about Louis afterwards, what happened, because he had a tremendous problem. Here he was with 3 children on his hand, and one was just needed a nurse, needed a mother who was not independent. And what was going to happen? My aunt Lena across the street, she was old already. She couldn't take care of a baby, and her children, she had they were both married. Her children, they couldn't take care of a baby either. There was no one who could take care of a baby. And my father, can I tell you the story? My father had a friend, his name was Danny Geisinger. And he he knew him. My father knew him from Europe, and they were friends. And Danny Geisinger was married, and he said that Louis. No, first let's go back. The first thing they had to do was take care of Alan. So they found a Jewish home. This was for taking care of children, and it was located in Far Rockaway. And they decided that this home was a place for a baby. Yeah.
So she died February 3rd.
Yes.
And how old was she?
She was 39. I believe she was 39. I always say she was 39 years old.
And had she been sick or what?
Well, she did have a heart murmur, which is, I think, a slowed down heart. And she did die supposedly of a heart attack. So.
And how old was Louis at the time then?
Louis had to be her age or a couple of years older.
What year was he born?
He was born in 1904.
So he was the same age as her. 38.
Yeah.
And then, so when did Alan go in the home? Do you remember, like, how long after?
No, I don't remember. I don't remember them taking me to the home, going with him there. You know, I don't remember. And I think I might have been there once or twice. I don't remember going to see him. And he was in the home about 1 year, because my father remarried in January 1944.
Miriam dies in February and he gets married 11 months later.
43.
Sorry, 43, and then 44, he remarries.
Yeah.
So do you remember Jerry at all during this time? Did you and him hang out a lot together then?
Well, he went, yeah, well, let me tell you what happened. Is during this time, Danny Geisinger, my father's friend, he actually, after speaking to his wife, he actually said, look, there's an apartment on the same floor as me, next door. Why don't you move there with Norman and Jerry, and we will take care of them during the day when they come home from school. And my father didn't have too many choices. You know, it's like you have to make a choice. Here he's got a business to run, and I don't even remember where we ate, you know, together as a family. I don't remember that. It's sort of blocked out of my mind. And I don't remember how how long after we moved to Loring Place. That's where we lived in the West Bronx. I don't remember when we moved there, to tell you the truth. It's sort of clouded. It just happened. And
So you don't remember how long after Miriam's death you actually moved?
no, but I know it was pretty soon after.
It was pretty, so
Soon after.
your mother died and you had been in, how long had you been in that apartment?
Uh, well, I think it was that year we moved because we lived on Vise Avenue, and I think I had my bar mitzvah in there in 1942 in March. And I know that my parents they had a big dinner party in Walton Avenue because they had moved to the apartment. So this was a celebration where they set up tables and they had a dinner, and it was that. And I remember that slightly. It was a happy occasion.
So in the apartment where Miriam died, you weren't in the apartment that long.
No,
Did you share a room with Jerry?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we shared a room, but I think I'm not sure. But I know it was a walk-in apartment. It's on the first floor.
Do you remember
I remember.
talking to Jerry about Miriam's death at all after? Do you remember?
Yeah, afterwards we did cry together, and we sort of, made up stories. It's going to be okay, and but they didn't. Louis really didn't sit down and involve us with the problems. He didn't want to involve us. It wasn't our problems. We were kids, and we don't. You don't tell kids your problems. At least he didn't. And so he had his own headaches with his business, trying to take care of us, trying to think of Alan. Big problems.
So you've moved, Alan is out of the house, Louis
Yeah.
is still going to work, trying to support you.
Yeah, he is. He did.
And then, and then he gets married 11 months later. I mean, how did all that kind of come about?
Well, that came about because Danny Geisinger was a hairdresser, and he knew someone whose husband had just died, and she had a stepdaughter and she had a stepson, but the stepson was old. He was around 21. That was Lenny, and his last name was Sternfeld. And my mother, Bella, that was her name, and I think she had about 6 or 7 brothers and sisters. Anyhow, she used to go to the beauty parlor that Dan Geisinger ran. And she also had another son, Pat, whose real name is Jay, and They call him Pat because he was born on St. Patty's Day. So it sort of stuck, and all his life. Uh, so, and he eventually, when Louis married Bella, he, my father, Louis, adopted him, and his name was changed from Sternfeld to Rosencrantz.
So you had, so there's Lenny and there was Sis.
Yeah, but Lenny was older. Lenny was older, and he was in the army. Sis was younger, and she lived with Bella. See, but when anyhow, what happened is that Danny Geisinger, he he introduced Bella to Louis before the end of the year, and in my father's mind, he wanted to naturally unite the whole family as quickly as possible. So what they did is they went I think in January of 1944, they went down to Florida, and they got married there.
Just Bella and Louis went?
Yeah, they went on vacation, and they got married in Florida. Of course, we had met Bella before, and father introduced her, but we really, we never discussed it. We never sat down and had a round table discussion. As I said, in Louis's mind, I believe he just wanted the family to be what he always says, together, together, together.
So you were 14 when they got married, right? Almost 15.
I was 14 years old.
And Jerry was 8 then?
Jerry was born in 35, so he was 8. He was 8 in 44. He wasn't, May is his birthday, so he was 8.
8.5.
8.5, close to another 3-4 months for a birthday.
And then Alan was,
1.
he was
One.
1. Okay.
Alan was 1, and I do know I have some pictures of people visiting Alan at the home, but I don't remember. I don't remember Jerry and I ever going there. I don't know. I don't remember.
So they get married in January, and then the next month you all moved in.
Well, they got married in January, but no, they got married in January. But the thing is, when they got married, we all 6 of us, not Sis. Sis lived at Bella's sister, Martha. So she didn't live with us because there just wasn't room. We were in, Louis, Bella, and the 4 boys, because they took Alan home to our apartment, and there just wasn't any room there. So this is 1944, and we lived there until, I believe it's either June till June 1945.
And two-bedroom apartment, three-bedroom, do you remember?
Yeah, yeah. There, Alan's Alan Alan was in the crib, and they were in with uh, Louis and Bella, and the rest of us were, I believe, I believe there was only two bedrooms.
So what do you
Two or
remember
three.
though? So
Pardon me?
there was this joined family. I
Yeah.
mean, what do you remember? That must have been kind of difficult.
Well, it was because we had to know each other. We had to get to know each other. But I, and it was strange. Also, it was strange when I don't remember. I called her mom at that time. It took time to adjust and adapt, right? Quite some time. And it was strange. I'm sure it was strange for Pat too, because here he was given a family, and his other family, he knew Sis and he knew Lenny, and they were not with him. So this was strange circumstances, and there were a lot of adjustments.
So did you all attend new schools then when you moved?
Yeah. Well, I didn't, because I was going to high school. So I went to DeWitt Clinton, from where in fact, in 1945, when we bought the house, that was my last term in high school. And Jerry and Pat, I believe they went to a school not far away, very close, where they could walk to the school on Loring Place. I think it was on a street called University Avenue. And there was a movie theater there too. Yeah, I remember the theater. And I always I always went to uh, the movies during the day. Well, for the first time in my life, Sis, her real name was Estelle, but they used to call her and Lenny, they used to call Sister and Sonny. So I got to know Sis, and she was the first one who took me to a movie at night. Can you imagine going to a movie at night? Wow, that was really something. And we got we got to be regular friends, even though Sis didn't live with us. She lived with somebody. She lived with her Aunt Martha in the Bronx, because that was the best the best that Louis and Bella could do. There just wasn't any room, and this was 1940. So by 45, it was the war, and Pop was making some money, and they decided to buy a house.
This was on Yates Avenue.
Yeah, and I didn't know what a house was. Didn't never lived in a house. Lived in apartments all my life. Never lived in a house. So this was another new experience for us, and I think that Bella in, encouraged Louis to make an investment in the house, and the first house cost, you ready? $10,000. And it was a 3-story house because there was a basement, then the first floor, which had the kitchen, the dining room, and so forth. And upstairs, there were 3 bedrooms.
Yeah, I slept in one of those bedrooms, I remember.
Okay. Oh, so you remember. So it was all the way upstairs.
So you're a teenager.
Yeah.
Your mama's died. You moved to an apartment, another apartment. Then you had this whole family, and then you moved to a house. I mean, how did that impact you?
I accepted it because moving to a new neighborhood, it was all houses, and it was nice getting to know new people, and they were a little higher class, I say, you had a house, wow, you were rich, so I adjusted in the neighborhood, and Bella really adjusted very well to the neighbors because she was really very social, and she knew how to tell stories and tell jokes, and she really was a fun person when you get down to it, getting to know her, thinking back,
So she stayed home, or did she work?
No, she had to stay home. Don't forget, she had 4 boys. And especially she had the baby, Alan. Alan was a young kid. I mean, he had 45, so he was 3 years old when we moved into the house to a new neighborhood. And Alan, he didn't know anyone else. He only knew Bella as a mother. He only knew her as a parent, her and Louis, So for him, growing up was different too. The first year, that would have been something if you could interview him, knowing what he remembered about the home.
Probably not much.
Did you interview Rose the other day?
Yeah. Um, so when did Louis have a breakdown? Oh,
Well, when he was, I think, 30, 37 years old.
oh, this was
This was
still
this
alive.
was during, yeah, he had a breakdown when Miriam was alive. Not when Bella was alive. I mean, not in Bella's time.
What do you remember about that?
Well, the only thing I remember much is that he went to. He said he had a nervous breakdown. That's what he used to call it, and he was in the hospital, and he went away by himself to a place named Lakewood, New Jersey. And there's a community where they had a lake, and there were homes. There were hotels, and he went away for a few weeks to rest up, and it was a time when he had to recuperate because he just couldn't work, and that's more or less what I remember of him, of his breakdown. And when you think about it, here he was during during the Depression, money wasn't coming in. He had a family, he had to feed them, he had expenses, and he had a balanced life. It was times were very tough. My mother didn't work, and then they had that what happened to Jerry with his ears when they had to operate on him, and they didn't have the money to pay the bills. People somehow get through it. He got through it.
It wasn't easy.
What, Mike?
It wasn't easy.
Very difficult. Very
Very
difficult.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go back. Sorry about that. Let's go
Yes.
back. So Bella's your mom. You were a little bit of a wild kid, maybe rebelling a little bit.
Yes.
What was your relationship like with your new mom?
It was very, very difficult for me. We were constantly arguing different points of view. And the toughest part, where we didn't have the unity of a family at the beginning, is that my father, Louis, wouldn't let me argue or self-express myself to Bella. When he heard that something was going on and we were arguing over many things. Here I was a kid growing up, 15, 16. I'm wild anyhow. And here I'm given a new mother, a new environment. So he would interfere and he would argue with her over my arguments. And there were plenty of screaming bouts, and it wasn't a quiet house. It wasn't a quiet house. And Louis was very tough and difficult. And then when you come across a combatant, Bella, who was also very difficult and tough, well, life just wasn't calm. It was rough, and and I believe, in effect, it made us tougher too. Because you learn to deal with it, and that, I'm philosophizing a little, and that is the norm. Not to say anything, but that seems to be the normal thing. And so, but yet, Bella was a wonderful cook, and Bella was very social-like, as I said. And Louis, he loved to have people over the house and to play cards and for money. And Bella, when she loved to cook, she could cook up a storm. Bella had such energy and strength that she would, if somebody wanted something to eat at 9, 10 o'clock at night, she would start cooking. She had that strength. So
So you lived in the house on Yates Avenue till you were like 23 or so?
yeah, 24 till we got married.
So
I
what
didn't
else
move
do you
out.
remember between the time you moved into the house through the time you were 24? What do you remember about that house? What stories do you remember?
What story do I remember? Well, I know that we had the Community Center of Israel, which was a shul that my parents belonged to, and they were really part of it quite a bit. And they were organizers and fighters because there was some problems. Some of the people didn't like the rabbi, and they helped the rabbi out. And so I belonged to like a club there. And then I graduated DeWitt Clinton very early when I was about 16 and a half. And here I was supposed to go to college. And going to college, my marks were not that great. I never really took it seriously. So, but I did get into City College of New York in downtown New York. And I used to take the train. There was a train there which we called the Dinky, go downtown on 23rd Street in New York City. And I had to go at night because I didn't qualify during the day, really. So I went at night to City College. And I went through college, but I was more in a maze. I didn't get out of college, and I didn't belong to a fraternity. And I was really a young adult.
What did you do during your days then?
Oh, during the days, I worked at part-time at Saks Fifth Avenue. And that's where I met a very good friend of mine called Marshall Rubenstein. He was working there too, going to school at night. And I was in the accounting department. But I didn't tell you that when I was going to school, to high school, that's where I had started working part-time for Saks Fifth Avenue. And I was working all around the building, that big building right near St. Patrick's Cathedral. That's where Saks Fifth Avenue was. And I was in many departments. I was a gopher wherever they needed someone. And that's where I earned 59 cents 59 cents an hour. That's the wages that they paid at that particular time.
Did you get to keep the money or did you have to give some to the household?
No, they let me keep the money, but but my allowance was adjusted accordingly. So didn't have that much money. Just needed the money for the for the train and needed the money for the restaurant called Horn and Hearted. That was a cafeteria where I used to go there to eat as little as possible because I couldn't afford it, and then would go to classes at night. So, and I I had some friends there in the neighborhood, but it was, it was a different type life, uh, working and then going to school. So really didn't have much time except on weekends to be social.
And do you remember Jerry and Pat in the house at all? I mean, were you close to
Oh,
them?
no, I tell you the truth, I didn't, I didn't see them that much, except for weekends. I really didn't see them because I was busy every day, and I didn't have the best relationship that I should have had. It's too late now, but the truth is the truth.
So do you remember, did Pat and Jerry hang out together?
Yes, I believe that they had about 6 or 7 buddies who used to hang out together. They used to hang out together. And they used to do things together. And I think they were pretty wild kids. I think they used to do things, mischievous things.
And Alan, I mean, Alan's still a baby.
No, Alan was the baby. He was the adorable little baby. Pat and Jerry, there was a school there, I've forgotten the name, Christopher Columbus High School. They went to Christopher Columbus High School, that's right, on Williamsbridge Road. Came back, see that? Yeah. And that I remember. I don't, and and then when I was 24, I moved to the West Coast. So that certainly didn't put me together that much with them and the rest of the family. The only one who I was close with was Louis and Bella and Alan. Alan and I somehow had a very close bond. I don't know how it happened, but it happened.
So we'll pick up the next session with you meeting Mom and then moving to the West Coast.
Okay, Michael. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
I hope I've given you some information. Some of it you know. Maybe there's different information you don't know, and you're finding out more about your dada.
Okay.
Kisses to you.